All right, cool. Today on the podcast, I am joined by my new friend, TJ Larkin. TJ is the publisher at Larkin Media, and has founded and operates 14 hyperlocal newsletters, I believe. Are they all in Texas?
No, they're not
They're
countrywide.
not. Okay. I know you're in Texas. He's down in
Yeah,
Austin.
I'm in
And
Austin area. Yeah.
yes. And TJ and I have spent a lot of time talking over the last week. Met up last week and then actually went on your podcast yesterday. So thanks, Ben. Thanks for
Everybody should check
taking the
that out to
time.
learn more about you.
Yeah. And that by the way, I'll bring it up again later, is Local Newsletter Insider. Is that the name of it?
Yep.
Or is that okay, cool.
That's the name of my show and newsletter about the business of local newsletters.
Both of them. And I'll have it all linked up and organized in the show notes too. Cool.
Perfect.
TJ, thanks for being here, man. I
Of
appreciate
course,
it.
happy to.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, you as well. Yeah.
So the way I kind of usually start this podcast is just to hear your story. And we've talked a lot about local media over the last couple of days, but I haven't heard. I believe you're in insurance before, so I'd love to hear your story, your professional background, and kind of the winding road you took to being where you're at now in local media.
Yeah, for sure. Started in insurance after college. My parents are insurance people. Whole family is in insurance. So, you go down the path of least resistance that everybody knows. There's a lot of good things about insurance, but a lot of terrible, as you can imagine. One of them is the limitations of working in a heavily regulated environment on what other businesses you can do, there's just so many limitations. It's infuriating. On top of insurance also, kind of being boring. So had kind of known for the last couple of years toward the end that, hey, I want to find something else. Also, AI is coming for so many industries, although we could talk about how it may be coming for ours as well, and good and the bad, but insurance is a big one. And so I've been looking at some other things to be working on. And I found this local newsletter idea on Twitter a few years ago, almost pursued it a couple of years ago. Of course, wish I had and didn't, and pursued some AI stuff first. And then my kids went to kindergarten. So I had no more kids at home. So my wife needed something to do without having a real full-time job. And I thought this would be a great kind of side hustle for her where, kind of worst case scenario, you still benefit because now you have a local audience, you have people know who you are, you learn digital marketing, you learn journalism. Like there's so many things you win even if you lose, sort of. So I thought it was a great kind of side hustle for her while I was building some AI stuff. And then slowly as we were doing it, of course, I'm helping her on the business end and thinking again as a, ADHD business mind, always thinking of different ideas and this and that. And just slowly started to realize as we did it that this is a much bigger play than I think most people realize. And of course, as we ran out of money on the AI thing, it was like, you know what, maybe I should focus a lot more on this. And I've recently started doing that. And as I'm talking to more people, primarily local business owners, I'm seeing what a large and unique opportunity this is because basically nobody is really doing this yet. And as soon as people start doing it, especially in the way that I talk about it, which is kind of a different angle, I think it's going to become a much bigger thing. And it's been really exciting and fun. And having people care about what I'm doing is also fun. That's one of the other big downsides of businesses like insurance, real estate, whatever. Nobody wants to talk to you when you do those businesses.
Right.
You're boring, right? There's a million of you and you feel salesy and you're boring. When you run local media in your town and you have this big audience of local people want to talk to you. They're excited. They want to learn. They want to get featured. And so that's just another big advantage of this model. So, so now this is what we're working on full time. My wife and I, we have our own local newsletters here where we live in the North Austin area. And then we run local newsletters for like 5 or 6 entrepreneurs in 5 or 6 different areas. I mean, honestly, it's kind of hard to keep up because I keep launching these frequently. We're at 14 now, I think. Have another one in the hopper. So it's really fun and exciting to be kind of on the cutting edge of, this model that people kind of thought went away and that we're able to bring back due to technology and unique marketing angles and then the unique monetization ideas that we're doing as well.
Yeah, I'd love to touch on all that stuff. And it's funny, a lot of the people I have on the show, like you said, that kind of momentum. Your parents were in insurance, you got into insurance, path of least resistance. A lot of folks like come from a journalism background or have always been really into it. And, historically with media companies, there's, I think we were talking yesterday, there's the editorial side and the business side. And a theme on this show has been that moving forward, local media companies are going to have to kind of meld that and have both sides of it. So anyway, what I'm getting at is a lot of the people I've had on have been more journalists and super mission driven. So it's really refreshing to have somebody coming from more of that business mindset, and coming in with fresh ideas and like that. And, you and I have very similar thoughts through our hours of conversations over the last days.
Yeah.
But before that, so you said you saw this as an opportunity a few years ago, initially, I think. I'd like you to tell me, just maybe describe maybe like the first newsletter, and I'd also like to hear why newsletters as the format, and then maybe like the style that they've kind of evolved into now. And maybe kind of the story, like just the first one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So, how this really came about and how I was thinking about it is I'm in the North Austin suburbs, which is, I think it's still technically true, but it has been for the last few years. It's the fastest growing part of the United States. Everybody hears Austin's growing. Well, it's the North Austin specifically is where the building is crazy. There's just so much happening. And I moved here right, immediately after COVID. So I had been here for a couple years. We love it here. There's so many positives. And when I'm looking at this, like, there I just happened to be in the fastest growing area of the country. That was a coincidence, right, for this type of model. So I'm like, okay, I found out about this model. It seems super intriguing, and I'm in the fastest growing place which means there's so much happening. There's a lot of things to cover, right? So I was like, okay, this is my signal to move forward with this. And then as far as the newsletter side, again, being a tech, business type of guy, I've been getting newsletters forever. Morning Brew, Hustle. I probably get 80 newsletters a week. Of course, I don't read most of them, but I try to, or at least I try to skim them. But I know the value of newsletters, and one of the biggest, actually, probably the most important part of a newsletter is that it comes to you, that you don't have to go look for it, right? And so that just solves one of the biggest problems. I don't care how good your website is, how good your content is, if people don't remember to go find it, that like something has to come to them to do it. And so that's where the newsletter comes in. The second piece is, and how we do things probably different than I think a lot of the traditional media companies that I see, is our newsletter by itself provides all of the value, or at least call it 95% of the value. You don't have to leave the newsletter to get value. So what I see frequently with a lot of these, because I do research in all these cities that we launch, and many of them, the traditional players, either they don't have a newsletter or they have one and it's like just a list of links. It's really ugly. It's hard to make sense of. You just kind of look at it and go, what am I looking at? And you're just overwhelmed. Or it's like one of them, I still find this hilarious. It's like, okay, it's just one image that says click here. And you have to again leave the newsletter, and that takes you to this that you kind of have to manipulate with your fingers on your phone. It's a nightmare. So even if these brands have good content, if you're not giving it to people in the way that they want to read it, they're not going to read it. And so what we're trying to combine this angle of giving it to people where it comes to them. It comes in a way that's incredibly valuable by itself without having to leave. And then the third piece is only covering what people actually want to read. So this part gets a little bit more, especially for your audience, if you have a traditional audience, more controversial. Again, there's pros and cons to this angle of, do you want to cover crime? Do you want to cover, city council, the intricacies of the votes and the who's running for what and what their platforms are, all these things. There's tons of value in that for sure from a certain angle, but your average local person probably doesn't care about these kinds of things. Crime is maybe they kind of care about, but it's also so negative. So our goal is to try to keep it an uplifting, like, when you move somewhere, if you're asking your friends, like, what do you care about? You care about what events are happening. You care what restaurants opening or closing. You care what news is happening that impacts you, that you care about, right? Not, these tiny little things that may technically impact you, but you don't care. So we basically only try to cover things that we think are interesting to people, and we leave off things that we don't think are interesting. And I think that's why engagement is super high. Also, lastly, the other piece of the newsletter angle is the acquisition strategy. So that's another angle that we have, especially that I have down better than most, is, when we launch these things in cities, we've gotten subscribers to our newsletters for as low as 8 cents. Now that only lasts a couple days, but usually when we launch a newsletter, we're getting subscribers for 15 to 20 cents. And then even as we get more to scale, we're able to get subscribers between 40 and 60 cents, let's say. So it's a great way to get opt-in readers into your brand for relatively very cheap.
How that was actually gonna be my next question anyway, is how are you acquiring them? Is that like through Meta ads, or
Correct. So
mostly? Yeah.
it's Meta ads. I mean, exclusively.
Is it mostly IG, like Instagram, or
Well, when we run the Meta ads, it goes to both automatically. So
gotcha.
we don't really we just do the same thing. I do think, I don't really look at that too much, but I'm pretty sure we do get more subscribers from Instagram than Facebook, but it's not crazy. It might be 60-40, something like that. But we don't have to worry about it because we just use Meta to say advertise everywhere, essentially, that Meta owns. Well, at least those two primary channels. I think you can actually do it on Threads or something, whatever. Nobody cares. So yeah, Instagram and Facebook is how we get subscribers. We also use some other techniques. Actually almost every newsletter I've launched for myself, I have two where I live in two different areas. And then two of my partners, we're so happy with the first one. They launched second ones as well in the similar area, right? So say if there's four suburbs, one newsletter covers two, and then the next newsletter covers the other two. And then what we do is we recommend upon sign up that they subscribe to the other one. Cause it's like, yeah, you don't live in that town, but that town's, 15 minutes from you. Do you care about what's going on over there too? And we get a lot of signups that way as well. So people sign up for both newsletters in their area.
Cool. I'm also curious. Sorry, I'm asking more about. Well, I also think this stuff is useful for somebody just starting up in the space, or like if you're a more traditional media company and you've been like seeing these newsletters pop off the last couple of years. So that's why I'm leaning into the acquisition thing. Just like, what does like the actual copy look like on those? Is it a static image? Is it like a
It's
reel or
like
something?
it's a combo of static text with video in the back. So
Okay.
I mean that we run different types of ads, but that's kind of
Right.
seems to be the best strategy is video and static text at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, so I'd also like to talk about the newsletters. So you have 14, you said. I'd like to talk a bit about monetization also. Like, how long did you wait before you started monetizing it? You said you had some monetization strategies. Like, could you just talk
Yeah.
about that kind of side of the business model also?
Yeah. So my story is a little not as ideal as I'd like it to be right now. And that is because, again, coming back to our brain types, um, as I was building this and started talking to some of my wealthier business friends, they all, wanted me to start doing this for them. Right. So that's why I have a bunch of these now. I'm basically partnering with people to do it. And so that's basically what I focus on almost exclusively is doing that. Plus I have my own channel and newsletter about this business. So I am not very focused on the two that are ours only in the area of Austin that I live in. My wife writes them and edits them. So she's like in the weeds on the newsletter itself. But neither of us are really trying to sell ads for this thing because I'm focused more primarily on, launching more of these and working on this licensing model that I'm working on, which we can talk about later. But we have a couple advertisers making a little bit, but that's not really what I'm super concerned about. So when the monetization angle um, that I talk about that I find very interesting is having the publisher of these, by the way, I like to think of them as local media companies, right? Not just newsletter. They're powered by a newsletter. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the primary thing, but really local media companies that the owners of these local media companies should be um, successful local business owners with high LTV businesses, okay, lifetime value businesses. So what that means is the traditional way, at least again, you may know a lot more about this than me and the local media companies, but generally just media in general, it's like the way you make money is ads, right? So you get this audience, you monetize it by selling ads. And that's great, but as we all know, that's one of the downsides in the local space is it can be hard to sell those ads. But if the person who owns the company also owns a high LTV business where their clients are the readers of the media company, they can then run ads for their own business as the advertiser. So, again, coming back to for obvious reasons, because I was in the industry, for an insurance agent, if you're an insurance agent, you make obviously this depends on a lot of factors, but say you make an average lifetime value commission of a customer is $4,000, right? If they stay with you and renew for 5 years, they have two cars and a home, buy life insurance, whatever, that's 4 grand. Well, if you're able to run ads for your own insurance agency where every single reader is a potential client, right? Whether they rent an apartment, whether they, drive a car, everybody could be a customer of your agency that if you can build trust and providing value, which you are if you're doing this kind of thing, then you will be able to get clients for your insurance agency, right? And so now you don't need to sell as many ads or even ads at all potentially if you're making a ton of money by selling your other business. right? And so that is the angle that I am working on with this licensing model, because I have people lined up right now wanting to do this. I need to get my model down first, but it makes so much sense that otherwise you're renting your marketing, right? It's a way to go from renting your marketing to owning your marketing, right? So instead of just giving money to Facebook or Meta or whoever SEO, well, I guess SEO is not, but it either works or it doesn't. Where in this case, you're actually, another way I think about it is turning a cost center into a profit center, right? Because if you say it costs you $3,000 a month to do this, but you're able to sell $6,000 a month in ads plus market your own business, now you're actually making money while marketing your business, right? And it's just a unique angle that I haven't seen many people talking about, and I'm getting a lot of good feedback on this, so I'm pursuing this pretty strong.
Yeah, yeah. I talked to you yesterday, I think, on your podcast about it, and I kind of had that own eureka moment a while back for myself with local media. Like I've heard of that kind of strategy before, like particular, I'm in the podcast space. I have a company that makes podcasts for local media companies, and sometimes I'll drop an ad for it in this podcast. So you might hear that drop in later after in the middle of this conversation. This would be a good spot for me to drop it in, actually. Yeah.
Drop it right now. Yeah.
But that kind of what's the term for it? The native advertising, I believe, where it's kind of or negative CAC, the negative cost to
That's exactly
acquire
what it is.
customers. Yeah,
It's the negative CAC model. I just had Nathan May. You know Nathan May? He's a big newsletter guy.
I'm familiar with. I don't know him, but I
Okay,
think I've heard him on some other podcasts or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
he does a lot of Beehive stuff, and he's a really, really smart guy in just the newsletter space in general. And I don't know that he coined it. I think he said he heard it from somebody, but call it the media mullet model. So you hear about this. Yeah, it's a good name. I like it. So you hear about this a lot if you listen to players in the newsletter space. Again, any side of the newsletter space, where again the morning brew hustle way used to be just get the big audience and make a ton of money from advertisers, but that's very, very, much more difficult now than it was then. So the angle is the front of the mullet, is collect, sell ads like you traditionally would and try to make some money that way. But the backside is selling courses, selling community, selling consulting. We're talking about your typical influencer creator type, right? If you have a newsletter, this is how you make a lot of money, is the back end things that you sell to your audience. I mean, I think this is kind of what Hormozy just did. It's like a similar, the back end. So this is becoming very common in the newsletter space of you need to have products that you sell that are your own products. Again, it's usually courses or consulting or community. And we're just applying that exact same logic to local media, right? Which is, yeah, you're still going to sell ads if you don't have to, but you try to sell ads. But the main way you can make money is by selling your local business. And or for a lot of people, it's, hey, maybe I have a local business that, I could sell people to, but really I want to leverage this to build other local businesses. Right. So it's like, okay, once I have the audience, then maybe I can just randomly build a business off the top of it. One of the guys who I first heard about this model from years ago when I wish I had started it, he ended up starting a luxury toilet rental business on the back of this, right? Because the audience is people looking for fun events, and he's connecting with event owners, and those events, if they're, not in a building, they have to have, porta potties or whatever. And he, started a local like high end one, right, for weddings and whatever else, and is very synergistic. Another guy that was just on my show recently, he's starting a Christmas light installation business. Right, most of our readers in a local media company like this are upper middle class, primarily women, but just call it upper middle class homeowners. Right, so these are all people who would be great customers for Christmas light installation. So now you have the audience of those people in your area, and he is running, putting that in his newsletter. He got, how many leads did he get? 300 leads the first time
jeez.
he posted about it. Um, I mean, this is the model that I'm taking. And so it's built-in optionality, right? It's like, oh, what can you do when you have a large local audience business-wise? You can do whatever you want, right? I mean, it's like, what do you want to do? Like, and that's exciting for a lot of people, people like us specifically, right? Where you're like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could go partner with this person, I could white label this service, I can send referrals. Another big one is, hey, you're already working with local businesses to do ads, to do whatever. They are coming to you, right? Because you have the audience. Partner with a digital marketing agency and take a 20% cut. You don't even have to build the business. You just partner with them and you take 20% cut. Partner with a virtual assistant agency, take a 20% cut, right? So lots of ways to make money outside of just sell ads.
Yeah, no, it's a really compelling case study and or a bot model, I guess. I live in a smallish, pretty small town, big for the region. It's a town of like 25,000 people in a pretty
Yeah, it's
rural
pretty
area.
relatively small. Yeah.
It's relatively small, but I mean, even just thinking of this model, if somebody wanted to do this, there's not a good local newsletter. There's a decent local newspaper here, but like the newsletter product, if somebody like if I were going to go launch one, I know owners of several businesses that I could partner with right off the top. I have a friend of mine whose dad is a custom home builder. You know, like what's the yeah, you know, what's the cost on that? So it's really interesting,
Hmm.
and I think there's a place for the traditional media model. There is a place for that accountability at City Hall and everything like that. But I think this is another. I think it's morphing as we're going, especially with AI accelerating and everything, the models. So it's really cool. So it's actually a good spot to step into, like your current project that you kind of focused on, and it's Inbox Famous. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, yeah. Inboxfamous.com. Yeah, that's what I'm working on, which is a kind of, still working on terminology and everything, but licensing model of taking this to these high LTV businesses and saying, "Hey, do you want to be the local, the publisher of your community and have all the access that that brings if you have somebody like me doing all the hard parts on the back end, right? Most of these people cannot or do not want to figure out how to use Beehive, how do you do design, how do you do meta ads, how do you create the content, how do they don't want to do it, right? But like they see the value in having this audience. Another key piece, I was actually just working on this right before we jumped on. We haven't really done this at all yet. We're about to tomorrow. Um, but we also, another reason that the newsletter is such a great play is we survey the audience the second they sign up, right? So there's another area many people get things wrong is they like ask them later inside of a newsletter, hey, can you fill out a survey? Nobody's gonna do it. Right? 1% of people will do that. If you ask them when they sign up, 40 to 60% will do it. So now we've got survey results. So now we have first party data, right? So we have all first party data about, again, how do I know it's mostly upper middle class women? Well, because I ask them. And all 14 of my newsletters, it's the same. 70% women, 50% or more homeowners, um, et cetera. So the survey, you can ask whatever you want, right? So if you're a business owner, like again, if I'm working on signing up some insurance agents, well, I would make sure one of the survey questions is about insurance, right? Hey, are you interested in looking for cheaper insurance? Right. Now that one's kind of boring, but you know what? You still get people to answer, right? So then whatever they answer, we can segment that audience based on their answers. Okay. So the one I was working on this morning is for real estate. Of course, one of the most obvious people who should be doing this are real estate industry people, whether agents or mortgage brokers or whoever. And one of the guys I'm working with is one of those. So we ask a question about, hey, are you interested in buying or selling a home now or in 12 months? Whatever, ask questions like that. And if they say yes, most people don't, but some do, right? Like call it, I don't know, 4 or 5% say, yeah, I'm looking to sell, I'm looking to buy, I'm looking for something. We can send just those people some sort of email. We can put them on a sequence. We can, right now we're going to introduce them to the publisher, right? Who's a real estate guy. Hey, just wanted you to know, I've been here 20 years. I'm a real estate guy. If you didn't have anybody yet, you can reach out to me, that kind of thing. So that is I believe can be very powerful. We haven't implemented it yet, but I know the fact that that is doable, I think over a longer time frame, that is going to work very well for these business owners.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a great idea, man. And like you said, like we've said multiple times, the shiny object syndrome. There's like so many interesting angles you could take here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got my notes all scrambled up. So, could you tell me about so you're running 14 of them? Does that include the ones you're running for other people too? The 14 newsletters? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we just have the two that we just do ourselves that are the two that
Gotcha.
I first started that are where I live. And then the rest are, basically partners with people. And so essentially what I've been doing is, again, it's mostly friends, right? These, I'm in some really good communities, some really smart local entrepreneurs who saw this and so I did it for them, just kind of, very loosey goosey type partnership agreements, just like, guys, let's just get this going and see if it works. Cause I have a suspicion it's going to work very well. And again, we only started these a couple months ago. So this is moving very fast because I think people are seeing this. But so now response has been so positive, and I have so many people wanting to do this that I'm basically working on formalizing it and turning it into a legitimate, uh, you know, system for licensing and doing this for others. I'm even building some software right now on my end to streamline some of the things that are difficult for us, which there's a lot. Now, this is not easy. So we do have 3 employees plus my wife plus me. So there's 5 of us right now doing these 14 newsletters, and it can be a little bit stressful, right? Like trying to. I'm sure anybody listening to this who's in local media knows figuring out everything is a bit difficult. But I'm working on some software to kind of to streamline this now so that we can scale to 100 potentially as soon as possible. Again, we've got people lined up right now wanting to do it, and I haven't even really tried to sell it. These are just my current partners mentioning it to other people that they know, and those people want to do it. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah. So in talking about that, like building a system out or whatever, what have you learned about like the actual reporting side of things or collecting this information that you're putting out in the newsletter? Do you have any tips or tidbits there? Because it is, that's one of the more challenging parts of putting out quality local reporting. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that, how that
Yeah,
has
it
gone
it
for you.
is. Yeah, it's there's 2 angles to this. The first angle is a lot of what our newsletters are, to be honest, just are not reporting style content, right? They are we are curating events, so let's be real, that is the most important part, right? That is what gets people excited to sign up. If you ask anybody in their town right now, "Hey, how do you go see what fun things are happening in your area right now?" They would be like, "I don't know. I go here, I go there, I go to Facebook, I go to Instagram, I go to Meetup, I go to whatever. There's like a million places. There's not a central place that makes this easy, right? So that's what we're doing. So we are basically doing the work for them. We are searching all these places, trying to find everything, and we're curating, right? Because there's obviously, especially the bigger the location, the more events there are. So we're trying to pick the ones we think are the most valuable, the ones people would actually want to go to, and then we narrow that down. So that's one of those kind of really annoying parts of it. It's kind of tedious, but it just is what it is. That's the value. That's what people want. And then we're creating content about restaurants and local businesses, what's opening, what's closing. Again, some of that is just what you find on Facebook, what you find on Google, and then a lot of news stuff with our partners, or they'll send us stuff. We Google for interesting things happening. They'll send us things that are happening. But I would honestly say that's a small-ish piece about what we're doing. Because like I said at the beginning, right? We're not writing about the city council voted 6-3 on adding 2 police officers to the rolls. There's a place for that, but that's not our model, right? So we
Right.
basically don't do that.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that makes sense. I've had other people on the podcast that have done the same thing. A guy out of Denver a while back, or a Denver area. And yeah, that stuff is still important, but there's a lot of stuff
It's
to
a
be learned here for everybody listening also. What if you are doing that hard-hitting reporting, investigative stuff or not. Can you tell me about Local Newsletter Insider, the newsletter and the podcast too?
Yeah.
Like what prompted that? Have you been doing that for a while? What kind of content are you putting out there? Because I think
Yeah,
people
no,
might
that's
be interested in, if based on this conversation, and learning more through
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So it just kind of I don't even remember what got me to do it. Other than well, I will tell you by the way. Sorry, let's step back because I kind of it's the same reason essentially. So I had been doing AI stuff. I'm very big into crypto, had kind of done some crypto stuff, 5 years ago before the last crash. And then also in insurance a little bit, although I never really loved it, but still understanding the value of having an audience, right? I've understood this for 6-7 years now, something like that. I was listening to My First Million in 2019 before anybody had heard of it. I was at the very beginning. So that type of mindset, I understand the value of an audience, and I had tried multiple ways to get an audience. Building an audience is very difficult, very difficult. And it's only getting harder. However, in the local space, it's actually very easy because number one, in this, what we do, we just pay for it essentially via Meta, which is super cheap. But even if you didn't want to pay for it, you could do things online, you could do social media, video content. There's all kinds of things you could do. It's easy to build an audience locally. And this is one of the first things I tell people on why this is such a good idea is because it's almost impossible to do what we do in any other area except for local. And so that for most people understand, have heard about the value of an audience, that's very appealing. Understand this concept. Then, of course, doing this for a while, I was getting lots of questions. talked a little bit about it on Twitter, whatever, and people were coming to me with questions. And then I was just like, well, why don't I just like, I'm already chatting with people like you, right? I was doing a bunch of that and I was like, well, why don't I just record this and put it online? I think people want to know what guys like us are thinking. I was only 4 or 5 months into this when I was doing it. And I was already one of the top people in the space putting content out about it because nobody's doing it. I was like, well, why don't I just do it? So I started doing it and got, relatively speaking, a lot of traction. People, I get emails. People love what I'm doing. All I'm doing is chatting with people like you. That's it. Like, I want to have these conversations anyway. Right. So completely unproduced. I don't edit anything unless the thing pauses or whatever. Just chat with people and share. And then I take the same concept and put it in the newsletter so people can read it. So I kind of summarize what the podcast is about, yank the insights again, a lot from AI. I'm not going to hide that, run it through AI for the insights. And then I edit it, of course. And then any interesting articles, I probably get 15 newsletters about the newsletter local media business. Most people in the space don't, right? So then I'll curate those finds. Hey, here are 3 or 4 really interesting articles about the space. And as always, the other thing I do, which I think is really interesting and valuable, again, probably this is maybe heretical to traditional people, but we just put funny memes in our newsletters because why not? People like to laugh. So we just sometimes we'll do it as a theme, right? Like last week, school's back in session, right? So it's like just put in 4 or 6 funny memes about school being back and the summer being over because it's funny and people like to laugh and put it at the end. People kind of, I think a lot of people look forward to it. Um, so we do that. I do that in my local newsletter, insider newsletter, and we do it in all of our local newsletters. And I think it's great. And again, it kind of goes against the traditional local journalism angle, right? Of everything has to be dead serious. Everything has to be, you know, very journalistic like you learned in college. And I think a lot of guys like us are just like, no, we're just gonna do what people like. I don't care. We're just gonna do if they like it, we're doing it. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, and I think like what we've said multiple times, there's a place for all that stuff, and it's very important, to keep a democracy functioning, make sure there's not rapid corruption happening in every small town. But then there's some lessons to be learned here. Throwing some memes, not taking yourself too seriously, like having that kind of smooth reading experience and everything like that. I think that's a lot of stuff that the traditional folks need to take away from this type of like publication. Also,
yeah.
did I
Well,
interrupt you there? Yeah.
no, it's good. I think you're right that so number one, like with anything, there's space for all of these. I think all of this is valuable.
Hmm.
I mean, again, I don't know if this is obvious. There shouldn't just be one local media company like that. We competition is good almost everywhere. We want people to have different things, right? Different types of restaurants. You like different types of food, go to a different place. Like same kind of thing. The other thing we do that comes back to why my whole model that I'm building now, the licensing model makes sense is we incorporate ourselves into the brand. Like we'll give our opinion. Now, we're going to shy away from, strongly held opinions about something that lots of people care about, right? We're not going to talk about the election. We're not going to talk about even like in my literal community, they're talking about building a freeway on the road that I live on right now. Like it's like, of course, 90% of people are pissed off. They don't want it, right?
Right.
So we didn't take a strong stand on that. But we will incorporate ourselves into even in that story. It's like, oh, we'll talk about, hey, we live on that road, right? Or another one will be like, oh, this restaurant's coming in. Oh, we love that one. We always go to the one in Leander, and now they're opening one in Cedar Park, and yeah, this is so great. We love to go here after the soccer game, whatever, right?
Hmm.
Just building that like true local connection that people can see we're actually local and we're actually here. I mean, part of the value of this too that is getting in front of the AI thing of people just trying to launch these things and just have AI do them completely.
Right.
That's probably going, I mean, it's already happening. It's probably going to get worse. So how do you solve for that is you actually be that local person and let people know you're here. Like AI is never going to be able to do that well. So again, something I think traditional players don't do because that's not typical journalistic standards, but we just do it because I think that's what people want.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. There's some great takeaways in this one. So I've got Larkin Media, the Inbox Famous, local newsletter insider, the podcast and newsletter. What else? Where can people find you online? Like, what else should I link to or point
Yeah,
people
I
to?
think the easiest way to find me is probably local newsletter insider. That's where the YouTube is. That's you can subscribe to my newsletter, reply to it, whatever. That's the main thing. Anybody interested in having me help you launch one of these things, Inbox Famous is where that brand is going to be for helping others to do that. So, but yeah, local newsletter insider is probably the easiest way to find me. Or I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. Super easy to get a hold of me. DM me, at me, whatever. I'm around.
Cool,
A
man. Yeah,
little
I'll let.
too online.
What's the term? I lost it. There's some term for that. Just aggressively online or something like
Aggressive,
that.
yeah. That's a good.
Cool,
Yeah,
man. Yeah, good stuff. I'll link to all that stuff, and we'll get this out. And I think everybody on all sides of the spectrum are going to take some stuff away from this because it's super interesting. I'll try and link to one of the newsletters also, so people take a look at it if that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Definitely grab. I mean, whatever. Probably Leander Scoop is the main one that the one we
Leander
started
Scoop.
with.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, they all kind of look mostly the same, but yeah, it's
That's the
probably a good
beauty of
one.
the model,
My
right? Of the franchise model,
I
right?
mean, dude, it's just duplicating this stuff all over. So yeah, it's fun though. But I appreciate it, man. This has been great.
Yeah, this is good stuff. So everybody go check TJ's stuff out, and it's all right there in the podcast app. So scroll down and click. All right, man. Thanks for being here. Have a good
Of
day.
course. Yeah, you too.
Yep.
Thanks, Paul.